Now we're going to talk about chemical changes. Chemical changes create new substances. It involves breaking down or making chemicals between atoms. Now Ms. Fulcher is going to show you some examples of chemical changes.
Alright guys, so when you go to Lowe's and buy a new shovel, the metal on the shovel is shiny, smooth, it's new. But let's say you're out in the yard doing some yard work and you leave the shovel outside and you forget all about it. And it rains and it stays out there for a long time. When you go back to your shovel, you see that it doesn't look shiny and new anymore. It has all of this brown rust on there. And rust happens when your metal has been exposed to oxygen and moisture for a long period of time. The oxygen combines with the metal and it forms rust. And that is a chemical change or a chemical reaction. That's what happens. The next example that I have for you is when you think about something, when you put two things together and it bubbles or fizzes, that's telling you that you have a chemical change. So let's do an experiment and see if that really works. So I have a cup, and in my cup I'm going to put some baking soda, and then I have some vinegar. So I'm going to put some vinegar into my baking soda and let's see what happens. Is it bubbling and fizzing? Yes, it's bubbling and fizzing. So that was a chemical reaction. When the baking soda and the vinegar mixed together, it caused a chemical reaction. And I know that because when it bubbles or fizzes, that's an indication that that's a chemical reaction or a chemical change. The next thing I'm going to show you is, have you ever been to a bonfire and you're roasting marshmallows, but have you ever really thought about the fire? So when something is burning or on fire, I'm going to set this paper on fire. That is a chemical change. Because once this paper burns and it becomes ash, it can't go back to being paper again. So it has changed into ash and it's not the same anymore, and that is a chemical change. So anytime you see fire or burning, that you know that that's an indication of a chemical change. So now I'm going to put this in some water so it doesn't catch my house on fire. Alright, now we're going to go over to the stove, because I know that all of you like food, right? So when we are cooking, we're cooking with different materials, and when we're cooking, it changes, it's a chemical change that happens while we're cooking. So for example, if you're baking a cake and you put in eggs and you put in oil and water, all of the different materials you put in there, after you bake your cake in the oven, you can't get the egg back out, you can't get the water back out, because that chemical change has happened and it formed into a cake. So now we're going to go over to the stove where I have a hot pan, and my hot pan, I have an egg. So I'm going to take my egg and crack it. And so as I crack my egg, you're going to see that my egg is in one form. But as it is cooking, I can smell it and I can see that it is changing and it can't go back into this eggshell. Its chemical change has happened, and now it is in a whole different state. So I can't change that back. So that is, anytime we cook things like that, a hamburger or whatever we cook, that is a chemical change because it is no longer what it was. It has changed into a different substance.
Thanks for learning about chemical changes with us today. And just to recap, a chemical change creates a new substance. It involves breaking down or making chemical bonds between atoms. And we now hope you know the difference between physical and chemical changes. Some indicators that a chemical change has happened is an explosion. An explosion is an indicator of a chemical change. Also, a change in odor can be a clue that a chemical change has occurred. So Ms. Fulcher showed you chemical changes, and I just told you some indicators that a chemical change had happened. Hope you enjoyed our short lesson. Bye.